Hey friends, happy Monday, the 17th of January. It's nice to be with you. I'm Father Bill Hill at Holy Spirit Catholic Community in Rock Springs, Wyoming. Memorial of Anthony of the Desert, as well as Martin Luther King Day, Wyoming Equality Day. Pray for our country. Pray for an end of the sin of racism. Please, I'll give you a daily reflection and invite you to read the readings prayerfully. And then I want you to turn off your screen and spend some time time with God before you move on to other things. All right. Few parish announcements. There's time and talent sign up that we're doing right now. So there's a form that's linked over in the sidebar. Please prayerfully discern how God's calling you to share your time and your abilities with our parish community. Please be praying for the clergy of the diocese who are in Casper this week, getting our Learn On, continuing education. Last one, Synod Sunday, 2 p.m., first time in the history of the church that all of us have been invited to participate in discerning the work of the Holy Spirit in our midst. Sunday, 2 p.m., SCM Parish Center, 624 Bridger. Everybody's invited. Childcare is provided. Call the parish office if you have any questions. We would love to see you Sunday afternoon. Anthony died 356, a hermit in Egypt. He's generally credited as the father of the monastic movement in the Christian church. He was written about by Athanasius, the Archbishop of Alexandria. He in general is known as a holy and faith-filled, godly person. Especially as the Roman Empire became Christian, he and others fled to the desert in order to try to give their lives completely over to God. So St. Anthony of the Desert, please be praying for us. Okay, we have a reading from the first book of Samuel, and we have a reading from Mark's Gospel. I'm going to tell you, the reading from the first book of Samuel is problematic. It talks about the ban, and the ban is something that we need to struggle with in religious terms. The ban comes up in some of these books in the early parts of the Bible. The ban is God telling Israel to kill everybody of a certain time. It is what we would term now genocide. Kill all the men, all the women, all the children of this tribe, of this clan, and kill all of their livestock and all of that kind of stuff. A couple of things we want to know. One, we don't have any indication that the ban was ever actually successfully carried out. Two, ancient scribes had a terrible tendency to exaggerate, right? Like they're writing for other scribal audiences and they all know that they're exaggerating numbers and things. And so it's a nature of one of those things that we have to ask the question, is this what God commanded, or is this what the people understood and wrote in the context of their own war-like time and place? And the reason we have to wrestle with it is because in the history of Christianity, we've used these sorts of passages to say, well, God in the Old Testament seems to say that this group of people needs to be destroyed. And my enemies right now is this group of people, therefore, it's okay for me to say that my enemies need to be completely wiped off of the face of the earth. And of course, the history of the 20th century reminds us that we want to be very, very careful of our own biases and our own hatred towards other groups of people. So that's what's going on in relation to the ban, right? We don't have any indication that it was ever actually carried out, and the scribes had a terrible tendency to always over-exaggerate and to inflate. But here we have, and then the third thing in relation to this. You have to explain why Samuel, the prophet who works on behalf of God, anoints Saul, and then Saul's line doesn't continue forward. This is the reason, right? Why didn't Saul continue as kings in his families? Because he was disobedient to God. Do you remember the time that this happened, right? It's being written after the fact, and it's being understood why weren't the promises fulfilled for Saul and his family? Because they were disobedient. David and his line will be disobedient as well. So that's part of the wrestling we got to do with these ancient texts. We can't just accept them on fundamental face value, because then it will lead us to some really terrible things that we've seen in the history of the Christian churches. Obedience is a theme in this reading. Enough background, let's talk just about the spiritual message. Obedience, which means listening with the ears of the heart. It's something that we're struggling with as Americans, listening to other people, listening with the ears of the heart to the concerns, to the values that are being expressed behind. You know, we are so proud of being independent and strong-minded. And I've shared with you guys before, right? Like celibacy, easy. Obedience, saying that I'm going to take orders from another fallible human being, especially in an age of like several rounds of clergy sexual abuse. Obedience, that is the hard one, right? To really allow our will, our independence to fall in line with that of God the Father and even that of other people. To listen well with the ears of the heart. How are we doing at obedience in these days? The gospel, just a brief word, right? I do appreciate in this gospel, it is scandalous and shocking that Jesus and his followers are not fasting on a regular basis. We have textual evidence that the Pharisees were fasting twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And and Jesus is a glutton and a drunkard. At least that's what he gets accused of by the people around him. I mean, he enjoys table fellowship, and they are walking a spiritual path that he says, in the future they'll fast. Right now the bridegroom is with them. And then the images of new wine and old wineskins. Even as I'm, becoming more and more middle-aged, I'm very mindful of how set in my ways I am, how controlling I can be at times, how hard it is for me to accept new wine in the old wineskin of my own life. How about for us? How is the Lord doing something new in our days? How are we being invited to see God working powerfully here now in a new way? Are we able to surrender control, to give permission, to trust that God is moving and working in the midst of it all? Something perhaps that gospel reading might incline us to. All right, Synod, pray for the clergy, fill out a time and talent form, read those readings prayerfully, spend some time with God, turn off the screen. God bless you, friends.